What's up, everybody? It's David. I'm your host of Highway to Health podcast series, and we've got a treat for you today. Today's podcast is not held in a studio. It is actually being held at the Merido Golf Club here in Dallas, Texas. Merido is home to some of the best in the world. Whether it's Scheffler, Spieth, Zalatoris, or Tony Romo, I get to join the VP of Health and Welfare over at Lockton. His name's Matt Brost. He was nice enough to invite us out to the golf club where we get to talk employee benefits and bridging the gap, improving the access, the experience, the outcomes for our patient population, for our employees. And Matt has a great personal story, one that we can all relate to, on the mental wellness, the mental health of ourselves, of our colleagues, of our employees, and the importance of providing the support, the tools, the solutions to those in need, and how that improves the overall quality of life for those around us, including ourselves. You're going to love this conversation. Matt has taught me so much about all walks of life, from being a dad to being a sales guy, and even in healthcare. Matt is one of my favorite people, and so I know you'll love it. Let's dive in with Matt Brost, VP, Health and Welfare over at Lockton. Enjoy.
Talking about the cost service people side of things, so the people side really resonates for me, especially the mental health side of it. When in 2020, my father-in-law, his name's Tex, and he's kind of one of my heroes. He got diagnosed with COVID and went to the hospital pretty quick, got on a ventilator. And then next thing you know, we kind of knew that he was going to be passing away. So my wife went in to visit him, and during this whole period, I was involved in this like viral healthcare plan that came out that honestly was probably 15 hours a day of just on calls, demos, all that kind of stuff. And so my capacity was just really, really limited. And then we've got this personal thing going on too, huge personal thing. And so my wife goes and visits him on his last day, and we lose Tex. And then all of a sudden, like my headspace, my mindset, like just almost, I would say almost like got into a coma. Like it was hard when I would open up the computer in the morning. It was hard for me to even see what was on the screen. I don't know if people have ever experienced that. And then my dad, at the same time, was starting to get ill. But my family got COVID because my wife got COVID when she visited him on the last day. So my family's got COVID, and we're going through the planning of Tex's funeral. And I remember us watching the viewing on a TV in our house because we couldn't go to the viewing because we had COVID. And then they figured out a way for us to pull our car right next to the gravesite and be able to just kind of be able to experience the burial of Tex. He was a police officer, and so that's a big deal. And so right after that, I remember us driving home, and I got a call from my mom. The same day we buried Tex, I got a call from my mom that my dad was not doing good. And so that night, at 9:30 at night is when my dad passed away, and fortunately they had just moved right by our house, so I was able to get over there, and I was on the other side of the window because again I've got COVID, and watch my dad pass away on the same day that we buried my father-in-law. And two heroes in my life. My dad was, Air Force pilot, and like I said, Tex was a police officer. And so that even escalated this just really hard places I was at. It didn't have anything to do with, like, I would say like a disability that I had or anything like that. I was just going through some really, really hard stuff all at the same time in the midst of probably experiencing the most challenging role that I've ever had. Awesome role. But and I just know that there's people working all over the place that are going through stuff like that, and probably, maybe not to the level that I was, but even a lesser level still gets you to a place that it's hard to do your job sometimes unless you've got somebody that helps you, mentally. And so just the mental health side of things, and the solutions that have come to the table, I really care a lot about, and I want to hear about them, because I just know that there's people that need them, and I was one of them for sure.
So you're going through this hard time, and
Yeah.
I think anybody would suffer through a lot at that period. You must have had a strong community around you that helped support you, but also may identify some things that, personally it was probably hard to understand in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like, the community I had around me, they're going through it with us. Like, so obviously my family and my closest friends knew my dad and Tex really well, so they're struggling themselves. So having people suffer with you obviously helps. But my team that I was working with, they knew what I was going through, and they just stepped in and just kind of took a huge load that helped out so much. But it really wasn't until, I would say, months after that I started to realize when all the mental health stuff was continuing to increase, people were talking about it, and then I started to realize, wow, I was one of those people that suffered with it. And so I had amazing people that stepped in and helped me through it for sure. And it would have been hard to go through it the way that I was, and probably for it to not impact my life as much as it could have work-wise if I didn't have their help. But this awareness of mental health, it allowed me to realize, like, okay, my mind was in a bad place. Like, it was in a bad place. It was in a place that needed help for me to be able to do my job well, for me to be a good husband, good father. My wife would say the same thing about her role in the house, right? And so, which proves out the need for mental health solutions in the market. But at the same time, like we've talked about, is that, mental health is, the awareness of mental health is a really good thing, but it can't be a stumbling block either. Like, life is hard. It's gonna be hard no matter who you are. We just saw Tony Romer out here, and I promise you life is hard for him. You wouldn't think so. Life is hard, and it's cool it's awesome to have solutions out there that can help us, in those times. But at the same time, we shouldn't be. I think this mental health awareness has sometimes created it to be a stumbling block for people too, and so we got to balance that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said. We talk about a lot on Highway to Health about it taking a village to improve, access, experience, and outcomes for our patient community. Sometimes that village includes the provider and these solutions, but it also takes, each and every one of us for our own personal responsibility to be aware of our own health and taking care of ourselves, but also your buddies and your colleagues, your peers. But we have to be resilient. Because, like you said, life is hard. It's always been that way. And I think something that, your dad was military, your father-in-law was a police officer. I have military and first responders in my family too. If you ever need some perspective on what people are going through, talk to people in that community. And they need support, we need support, but at the end of the day, it's going to be tough. And resiliency is a skill that we all should train and work on.
Be ready for those challenges when they hit, man, because they're going to hit. But I think it's cool, and I think, from my role that I have with employers is just making sure that if we're going to have this conversation about impacting the mental health of their employees, that it's with solutions that have been vetted and that are truly making a positive impact, and they're not checking it off the box. And that's if there is a person on the other side of the phone or the computer screen that's a qualified person to be able to handle challenging stuff in life.
So back on that topic of, providing the right level of service and vetting the solutions that these employers need, you must build a pretty strong partnership with the solutions and the products and the other companies that are out there. How do you build that relationship with those third parties? What's your strategy?
Well, it's interesting. At Lockton, we pride ourselves on independence, and so and that's really the biggest differentiator in Lockton is that we're a family-owned independent company, but we feel like to be the best advisor for our clients is that we need to look at every opportunity as kind of independent from the others. And so, sure, we're going to have products and solutions that we think are best in class, but it's important to us to still stay independent, to kind of keep those products at arm's length to a point to where, we're not being biased at all, because relationships can kind of go that way, right? And so there's other brokers out there that have things called consortiums where they actually take these vendors and bring them into the fold and say, hey, we're going to treat you special. We think it's best for the client for us to say, hey, we're going to bring our leverage to the table for you because we're a large broker and we do a really good job, but we're best to stay independent from those consortiums so that we can make the best decision for you, the employer, every single time.
I'd like to, after I 187 into the wind here, after I navigate this, I'd like to ask you how you draw that balance of being educated, but also keeping them at arm's length, because that's tough.
Yeah.
Oh.
We got a team of people at our firm that have like an overall, vetting process that they do too, and it's a resource of ours, right? Like, it's really good when a product gets vetted by them, even though, for myself and our associates, we can work with any solution out there, but when it's been vetted by that team, it's helpful, and we get a weekly email from that team of the progress that they've had with certain solutions, etc. That can be anywhere from a mental health solution that in the grand scheme from a benefits standpoint might be a small piece of the pie to the whole health plan itself. So the cost service people is just the way, I was mentored by a really awesome guy named Den Bishop. And he had a way of just looking at things in a really simple way. And so it led me to try to take something that's really complex, which is, creating a whole employee benefit strategy for a company.
Right.
And try to get to a place where my role sounds a little bit more simple, and it allows for me to have more simple conversations. And so I thought, in my role, what I'm solving for is cost, service, and people. So I'm trying to steward the cost of the employer, trying to provide superior service, the best service we possibly can. What is the service scope that you need as the employer? And then the people side. And around the people side of things, I really try to encourage employers, and a lot of employers don't need this encouragement, but to not minimize the influence that you have on the well-being of your employees. They're likely spending more time with you, the employer, than they're spending with their family. And so I feel like there's a big responsibility in that. And so the conversations that I have with employers, whether it's a prospecting conversation or it's with one of our clients, is I really try to make sure that we're making an impact every single year, every single month on cost, service, and people. And our conversations will be a lot of times when you're in a meeting with me, hey, let's focus on cost right now. This is going to be more of a cost meeting. And then just know we're not going to forget the people piece, or we're not going to forget the service piece. But it's really easy to get into a meeting and you're just talking about the whole world and the kitchen sink and that kind of stuff, and then you never really solve anything. So yeah, I try to just segment it out. Obviously, I don't know any employer that wants to spend more money than they have to on their benefits, and so everybody cares about cost. There are some employers that are just like, leave me alone until renewal. So the service side to them, good service to them is leave me alone.
Right.
That's not what we do very well. Like, we want to be there for you, but and then the people side, when we can get together with an employer that really loves the people conversation, I light up. Like, that gives me life. And so, but yeah, all of them are equally important. And for us, it's important for us to know with our clients what are the more important pieces too, which is a good conversation to have. So yeah,
it's important. Because like you said, it can be overwhelming. There's so many different things, and being able to, put those buckets out there and have those deep conversations about fixing those three pillars probably simplifies it, and in a way allows you to be a guide for these employers, which they need.
Yeah,
they need help in this.
And the cost piece seems daunting, but really when it comes down to it, like, if I whiteboarded the whole cost world of what I do, it starts with first how you're funding your plan, and then it goes, okay, when we decide how you need to fund your plan, whether it's self-funding, whether it's captives, whether it's fully insured, then you've got these tentacles. Like, when you start to take risk, your biggest cost drivers is complex claims and pharmacy. And so, like, those are going to be a huge focus if you're a self-funded employer, for us to talk about high cost in pharmacy. And then there's tentacles that break off of that. And so, I have a tendency to be a little bit ADD. And so to be able to be, to kind of have those worlds that I focus on has helped me a lot, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I can see how I should be applying it in my role.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not going to people and talking about these complex relationships, but oftentimes you get busy chasing rabbits, and you never really solve the problem or answer the true question or the true objection because you never go deep enough.
Yeah.
And if you were to focus on those pillars like you, so I can kind of see how it relates to athletics in a way. A good coach probably teaches you step by step and builds upon the last step to make you into a better athlete, a better player, and you probably had some experiences like that when you were playing.
Totally. And to be able to simplify it, especially in the game of golf, you got full swing, short game, putting. I like to think in worlds of three, even though full swing is a little bit more complex than, like, the driver swing is a little bit different than the iron swing. One thing that I really like, I feel like what I learned in sports that's similar to what we deal with in the business world, and especially in healthcare and solving problems, is I had a coach that always told me, play to your strengths, practice your weaknesses. And so when we're with employers, we've really got to think about that. What are you strong at? We're going to play to those. We're going to really execute on those and help you, the employer, to really get the most of those things that you're really strong at. But then what are some weaknesses that we can practice and that we can help you on,
Because you got to be aware of them.
Yeah.
Or else they'll bite you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Kind of like my hook.
Yeah.
So, we started this conversation around mental health and and being patient-focused, patient-centered. Explain to me a little bit more about, how the healthcare inflation trickles down and impacts not just the employer, but the employee and the provider.
Well, I think what needs to happen, and I think what's going to happen, is that, with a lot of the mechanisms to be able to solve kind of the cost problem that's out there is to essentially create opportunities for the patient to be more of a consumer. So sometimes that means that, say you go into a complex care situation, okay? A self-funded plan and a well-run self-funded plan, there should be an advocate that's going to intercede in the event that claim kind of starts to hit the books. Okay. And so then there would be a reach out. It's called care management, to where that care management team helps them go, and they have to do that balance of going to the best place for the patient, but also the most efficient place for the employer. Okay. Because, it's not uncommon to all of a sudden complex claims become $1 million things, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And so you've got that care management piece, but then there's a plan that I was involved with, and now it's coming about in two different ways, to where the employee is now being incentivized to go the highest quality of care. Okay. And so this is where this consumerism comes in. And so basically it tiers providers on tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 1 being the best. And the plan doesn't have a deductible anymore. It's got just a variable copay. And so the employee now needs to be a consumer before they go to any provider to say, what is going to be the best provider for me to go to? Because the best provider is going to have the lowest copay. So if you're going into a situation where you're getting a knee surgery and you have one of these plans, you're going to go on the app or you're going to call their customer care to find out, if I go to this provider, it's going to cost $700 to get this knee surgery. If I go to this provider, it's going to cost $1,800. The cool thing is that $700 one is the highest quality provider, because all these provider contracts and the cost of care and that kind of stuff, it's kind of hard to actually have a grasp on that. But you can have a grasp on reducing readmissions, reducing infections, and all that kind of stuff, which can really minimize the cost for the employer. So getting your employees to go to the highest quality of care sounds potentially expensive, but it's not, because that's the way, that's the way contracts go with carriers. But getting them to go to the highest quality of care is much less expensive when it comes down to it. So so the employees, the patients, need to understand that plans are going that way. For so long, it's just been carte blanche, go wherever you want.
If it's in network, do it.
Yeah, do it. But now they need to start understanding that we need to approach healthcare just like we approach buying a television, just like we approach buying a car.
Yep.
Because that's the dollars that we're talking about.
You're right. And it incentivizes the provider to provide high quality care.
Yeah.
Because as consumerism rises, and we're incentivizing patients and employers on sending these patients to the right provider, getting the highest quality care, now competition sets in on the provider side, and they're paying more attention to the quality of care that they're providing or rendering, which it leads us into, and we don't have to get into all this, but that's why we're starting to see finally some momentum in the value-based care models and reimbursement structures that we've talked about for 12, 15 years. But now we're actually seeing some momentum there, and it's by necessity, because of the inflation that we're seeing. It's like
100%.
You've got to be a better consumer of your own healthcare. Well, thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for what Lockton's doing. And thanks for showing me a thing or two on the golf course.
No problem, man. Anytime, bud.